بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي المؤمنين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد ولد آدم أجمعين. So today we're going to talk about Quran because Quran is probably the first thing that gets neglected outside of the month of Ramadan. It's the first thing that's dropped. Just like how Shaitan is the first thing that's forgotten at the end of Ramadan and all of the habits that we build up in Ramadan, the first thing that gets dropped is Quran. So this requires its own discussion and its own analogies and its own energy. So even for this talk, I'm not even sitting down; I'm standing because it requires different, it requires different type of approach. And our brother, he said, I just want to mention that first Maghrib after Ramadan, it felt different. Like my focus kind of died down. Kind of crazy how fast it happened. And you know what's amazing? The more you benefit in Ramadan, the more you feel when it's gone. Like the more the impact hits you. Some of the ulama of old, some of the scholars of old will be described as weeping. As Asr comes in and Maghrib comes in and Isha comes in, they just crying, because they're losing that time. And so the more you're able to derive spiritual benefit from the month of Ramadan, the more you actually feel it when Ramadan is out. But that's not to say that just because, remember, this whole series is called Beyond Ramadan. So just because you weren't able to take as much as you can from the month, it doesn't mean that it's over, right? In fact, right now becomes the time to ask for that Ramadan to be accepted and to begin to put together a game plan for bi'idhnillahi ta'ala next year. So Ramadan and me. First things first, even though Ramadan is past, we need to just take a look at the significance of the relationship between the Quran and Ramadan, right? And these are verses that many of us know. We know them well. This is the verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 185. In the month of Ramadan, that is when the Quran was actually revealed. It's a guidance for the people, a guidance for all of mankind, and it comes with those clear bayinat, those clear proofs from Allah Jalla Jalal. And on top of it being when the Quran was revealed, on top of it being huda for the people, it is clear proofs of huda for the people. And even more so than that, now you get al-Furqan. Now you have the criteria necessary to be able to distinguish between right and wrong. And we also have this verse in Surah Al-Dukhan. I put 43, but it's actually chapter number 44. Zukhruf is 43. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is in that blessed night, which is Laylatul Qadr, that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent down Al-Quran, Al-Majid, and that it serves as a warning for mankind. And there's some verses that come after that. I just want you to make a note of it to mark not just chapter 44, verse 3, but verses 3 through 7. There's a concept in tajweed of ibtida, of when to start, and the waqf, when to stop. And so if we were to be reciting, we wouldn't just like stop here. There's something that comes after that. And then, of course, we know the verse from Surah Al-Qadr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this was revealed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down the Quran on Laylatul Qadr. Quick question. Does anybody notice anything unique about these ayat? Anything stand out to you unique about these ayat? I'm going to tell you, it's not the stereotypical thing. It's not the cliche thing. It's not a trick question. But have you ever noticed anything about these verses? Besides the fact that these verses, they get talked about a lot in the beginning of Ramadan, before Ramadan starts, in the beginning of Ramadan. And the more you get into Ramadan and after Ramadan, the less you're going to hear about these verses. So something else. Anything stand out unique about these verses? Anything? Anyone? You can raise your hand. You can send it in the chat. Anything stand out? I know I put you on the spot. I thought he was just going to share the verses. Yeah. We'll take at least one guess, inshallah. What? Anything interesting about these verses? Odd numbered? Wow. Whoa. Yes, they're all odd numbered. Coughed up blood. As an astute thing to notice, mashallah. there's hikmah in every single ayah of the Quran, and every fabric of the Quran, in the chapter numbers, the verse numbers, and the syntax, the sentence structure, and the i'rab, the grammatical breakdown of the verses. There's hikmah in every part of the Quran. So it's very interesting. You notice this odd number. Well, one thing that some of the Orientalists and the enemies of Islam tried to do is they tried to say, look, on one hand, you're saying that it was revealed in a month, and on another hand, you're saying it was revealed at night. So was it revealed at night or was it revealed in a month? It contradicts itself. This is what some people, they tried to say. Was it revealed in a month or was it revealed in a night? This is a part of the beauty of the Quran and its language, and also a part of the beauty of the only thing that elevates the month of Ramadan to the level that it's elevated to is the fact that the Quran was revealed in it. If it wasn't for the fact that the Quran was revealed in it, then we wouldn't have anything really to talk about for it. And notice how Allah had preserved Siyam, fasting, for this month that the Quran was in. And Siyam is an act of worship that Allah Himself rewards, not in any other way. The act of worship of fasting is unique from other acts of worship. So that's one thing to note about it. But Ibn Abbas, in explaining this, he says, look, the entire Quran was actually revealed on Laylatul Qadr, right? And then over the course of 23 years, because it went from Allah, the preserved, or the Allah al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, in which everything was written. That excerpt from that preserved tablet of Al-Quran, that's when that came down. And then over the course of 23 years, the verses were dropping for different situations and circumstances. So imagine, just bear with me for a moment while I explain to you the miraculous nature of the Quran. Do I have a book? I know I got something. Only book that's within hand reach is Quran. That's not a flex, I promise. Okay, let me just explain this to you. Say I have a book, right? And just for a mental visualization, I take that book and I hold it over your head, right? I take the book and I hold it over your head. And as things are happening to you throughout your day, I open the book, I turn to a page, I pull out an excerpt from a paragraph, and it actually tells you exactly what to do based on that situation. And that happens for a day, then it happens for a week, then it happens for a month, then it happens for 10 years, then it happens for 2 decades, then it happens for nearly a quarter century. It's easy to forget that the Quran, 23 years, is being revealed over the course of a quarter of a century. It's a long time. So in that book, it's just there. And everything that's happening over the course of that time, it's just coming down. That just goes to show you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is not confined to time or space. It's just waiting. Once this takes place, then the ayah comes down in response to what is happening. Without going too deep, if I try to explain it too much, I may confuse some people, as we saw from our Qadr class. So let me just take it easy with that. But the point being that the Quran, it came on Laylatul Qadr, and the Prophet ﷺ's revision of it. Different ulama, they said different things about the merits of the month of Ramadan in relation to the Quran. Now, many of us, we've heard the story of Jibreel coming to Jabal al-Nur, the mountain of light, and squeezing the Prophet ﷺ and telling him, Iqra, Iqra. Multiple scholars from Ibn Ishaq to Ibn al-Jawzi and many others, they actually said that this took place in the month of Ramadan. So the first word coming, it happened in Ramadan. And not just that, but the Prophet ﷺ, we know that he would review the Quran with Jibreel every single Ramadan. And in his last Ramadan before he died, alayhi salatu wasalam, that this is when he recited it twice. Some of the ulama, they say this is actually when the Prophet ﷺ would get the arrangement of the verses, would get the arrangement of the chapter numbers. This is when he would learn the tafsir of the ayat and be able to explain it to the Sahaba as he was teaching them hifd of Quran. So this month of Ramadan is when you get the best revelation. It's the best out of all of the forms of revelation that had come before. The Quran is the penultimate version of it because it's a synopsis, a summary, a consolidation, a nazm, if you will, of all of the revelation that came before. And it came down on the best night in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed everything. I had to stop myself from writing a bunch of things about Laylatul Qadr before the class started. Otherwise, you would have seen a half complete one note on here. You would have seen a half note. But In that night of Qadr, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had aligned the affairs of everything in the heavens and the earth, and had made it a point for the Quran to also come down during that time. And it was sent to the best messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is within the month of Ramadan, but don't you know that the impact of all of this, it exceeds this month. See, our relationship with the Quran is often tied to this penultimate buildup of the month of Ramadan, but rather it's culminating in this month to carry into next year when the month comes again. So it's a cycle. It's not an event. It's something cyclical that has a starting point that goes back to its starting point. So I mention all of this to say to you that when it comes to the Quran and I, which is the grammatically correct way to say it, or Quran and me, it's important that each and every single one of us know that it doesn't end in Ramadan, it's launching us beyond it. That's why it's a huge disservice that we only hear these verses in the month of Ramadan as if they have no application outside of it. Well, I guess if we're not fasting, we don't need to hear the verses of fasting. I guess if we're not, fundraising, then there's no point. Not too far? Is that a verse too far? Okay, we really. So we are, and this is actually a testament to our relationship as an ummah with the Quran. The Quran is not there to serve us when we want it to fit our needs. Well, I guess it's time to fundraise. Let me get these verses on Ramadan. Yes, pick these same 4 verses every single year. Or, we want people to come to the masjid. We want them to donate in the last 10. So now we get our khatam ceremony. Make sure you finish by the 27th night. No, the Quran is not meant to be used as a tool for our own devices or for our own needs or for our own thought processes. Rather, the Quran and its revelation and the implications of it from Ramadan definitely exceeds beyond Ramadan. And this concept is actually where the title Beyond Ramadan came from. Because Quran is not just for Ramadan, it's for beyond Ramadan. I'm going to mention some examples from the Salaf al-Salih, the righteous predecessors of those who came before, from the best generations of Islam and the mountain ranges who carried the knowledge of this deen. I'm going to mention to you their relationship with Quran outside of Ramadan. We like to pull, when it's convenient, brother, they have a special halaqa in Ramadan. Oh, well, Imam Malik, he didn't do halaqats in Ramadan. We like to take these things and fit it for our own opinions. Imam al-Shafi'i in the month of Ramadan, he would complete the Quran 2 times every single day, meaning he would complete the Quran 60 times in the month of Ramadan. We have these examples like this, but let me just share some examples with you of people, of the righteous who came before us and what they would do with the Quran outside of it, and prepare for your feelings to be hurt, because that's all this can do. Abu Bakr ibn al-Ayyash, he said, pointing to a corner in his house, and you see that corner right there in my house? I read the Quran there every single day. He said, I've completed the Quran there every day for 60 years. Every day. He's talking about himself in that corner of my house. Just for me, that little plot on the ground, they didn't have carpet, but on the ground right there, I complete the Quran every day for 60 years. Whenever he was on his deathbed, his sister was weeping because Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash was actually a great man, rahimahullah. And we have to come with the stories of the unknown heavyweights, in order to talk about his example and whatnot. But we're just going to stop there for now. But his sister was weeping and crying because of her love for him and the impact that he had on the ummah and the people around him. And he said, "Why are you crying? What are you sad for?" He said, "Wallahi, you see that corner," pointing to the same corner in his house. "You see that corner over there? I completed the Quran over 18,000 times right there. What are you sad for?" Man, have we ever completed anything in our lives that you've done it? I've played at least 18,000 Smash online games. Anyone who has the patience to play Smash online, may Allah give them the patience to do their ibadah for them. Anyone? Or even like, can you even say, wallahi, on YouTube, I've seen 18,000 videos. I'm sure that they're tracking you. I'm sure you maybe inshallah, you can open up the statistics. They got that little symbol that says stats for nerds. Maybe if you hack the code and go into the backside of it, you might be able to see that how many videos you watch. But 18,000 videos is a lot. Allah forgive you if you're watching that much. Is there 18,000 of anything that you can think of? Most people don't even have $18,000 in their bank account. Some of us have not even accumulated $18,000 in 18 years, of living. He said, me in that corner, there's nothing for you to be afraid of. There's nothing for you to be sad for. In that corner of the house, wallahi, I completed the Quran over 18,000 times. And then Imam al-Dhahabi, he also said, and you're going to see this in different places because depending on the narration, people will say different things. He said that it was known of Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash that he would complete the Quran at least once every single day for 40 years. So when he's narrating it about himself, he said, I did it for 60 years at the end of his life. When Imam al-Dhahabi is narrating what was known about him, he said 40 years. So even then you can see he kept something between him and Allah that most of the people may not have known directly. Now the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a well-known thing, is that you should not complete the Quran, you should not try to complete the Quran faster than within 3 days. And another narration says 7 days. I'm not, this isn't really the ground to talk about the fiqh of completing the Quran, but rather to point out to you that the Prophet ﷺ had to tell the Sahaba, look guys, if you want to do khatam of Quran, if you want to complete the khatam of Quran, then make sure that you don't do it at more than that you space it out over either 3 days or 7 days. We have some people who, if they get their kid to do khatam of Quran, they treat them like they just did their hifd. In fact, we have a culture today where hifd of Quran is really just khatam of it. That you got to sit and read and forget and memorize and forget and memorize and forget, and then mashallah, you finally finish reading the entire Quran to a sheikh. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows at the end of that journey how much is still memorized. It's just khatam. A person may finish hifd school, and once they out and they get the title of Hafid and they get their biryani party, they may not touch it again. So I put in my 3 years. I put in my 2 years to get my hifd. I'm Hafiz Saab now, so you leave me alone. This is the culture that we have today when it comes to the Quran, to the point where Prophet ﷺ is saying, hey, just take it easy. Once a week, guys, once every 3 days. And for us, if we get to do it once in a lifetime, then this is amazing for us. So you can see the vast divide between our relationship with Quran today versus how it was before. Now, there are exceptions to the rules, actually. You'd be like, well, the Prophet said once every 3 days and once every 7 days, and you just told me an example of a guy who did it once every day for 60 years. Hey, look, don't do that. All right, you keep your pocket check to yourself, okay? There's exceptions to the rules. The ulama, they talk extensively about when it's okay to complete the Quran in different lengths of time. Some of the Sahaba would complete the Quran sometimes upwards of 3, 4, 6, or 7 times a day. You'd be like, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. They could. And this is why they were the preservers of the deen, you see? So is it impossible? Is it impossible to actually complete the Quran this many times? I'm going to tell you how they used to do it. Okay? I'm going to tell you how they used to do it. Well, actually, back in the day, they didn't. Most of the people couldn't read, so they were the mushaf, right? May Allah make us the mushaf. I mean, so there was different types of reading. So some of the readings that they would do would be very, very quick, just reading it very, very fast. And then just kind of going through it like that. Why? Why speed read it? Because 10 hasanat per letter. All right, let me just pack this in real quick. Let me just go ahead and get that. You know how some people, when they pray their Sunnah prayers, they don't pray it super long. They just, let me knock this up and get these palaces every single day. Let me go ahead and get my ikhlas in so I can get palaces every single day. That's the move. So first level is speed read. So that would be one khatam that they would be doing as a speed read. Just while they're moving and while they're walking around, they're just reciting it to themselves. And then another type of reading that they would do. On top of that khatam, they would have another khatam that they had going on where they'd be reading it super slow. They make that slow motion husri and mujawwid that you find on the internet where it's like 3 hours, 3.5 hours for Baqarah. I knocked that thing out in 25 minutes, That's how we are today. They would have a separate khatam where they're taking it super slow with tafakkur and tadabbur and getting crushed by the verses. So and sometimes that khatam, it would take a year. Sometimes that khatam, it would take 5 years, it would take 8 years. You all know famously that Abu Bakr, or not Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, it's narrated that he famously took, some narrators say 8, some say 10, some say 12 years to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. Do you think it's because he couldn't just memorize it in a month? Doing a page a day like is a standard for today? No. He's reflecting over it. He's taking his time with it. Do you think that he did not read Surah Al-Baqarah except that he was memorizing it? No, that's our sunnah today. Rather, he was reflecting over it and understanding it, and while he's doing that, he's also reading it and reflecting over it. So that would be the khatam on top of the khatam. You got your speed reads, let me get these 10 hasanat, then you got your slow reads so that you can like reflect and ponder over the verses. And then they would have another khatam on top of that khatam, because even there were no Quran teachers. These were fuqaha, these were mufassirin. These were people of knowledge in all fields. There was not someone who said, I only specialize in Quran. No, you specialize in Quran. That means you specialize in everything, because in Quran is fiqh, in Quran is Arabic, in Quran is seerah, in Quran is everything. So even while they would be teaching hadith, even while they would be teaching fiqh, they would have another khatam on top of that they would be doing by teaching their students Quran. Because it was not just a, hey guys, come to this Aqidah class type of thing. No, if you're going to come learn Aqidah, then you're going to have to come and learn Quran. It's not just, hey guys, we're going to do some hadith and talk about mustalah hadith and stuff. No, if you're going to come in here for this, then you're also going to take Quran. So while they were doing their speed reading, while they were doing their slow, long burn reading, then they would also be doing khatam with their students. Okay, well, this student is this far in Quran, and they're going to finish at this rate. And this student, and they would count that khatam for themselves, because they were savages for their akhirah. Like, no, if you think you're impressive for finishing the Quran with me, well, I'm even more impressive for helping you finish it. So they would have different khatam with their students. And then they would have another khatam on top of the khatam, on top of the khatam, on top of the khatam, where now it's not even moving the mouth, because it's much easier to read with your eyes than it is with your mouth. So while they're holding the mushaf and while they're reading, they're just reading it with their eyes. For those who could read, they would hold the mushaf and they would just read through it with their eyes, just to keep their eyes on it. You know, some of y'all read Harry Potter, the whole series. How many pages is the Harry Potter collection altogether? That's maybe like what, like 3,000 pages, more or less. That's depending on the version of the Bible, that's about as long as the Bible is. Now go ahead, you raised your hand. Do you know about how many pages it is? 4,224 pages? What? Oh my God, 4,224 pages. So as a kid, some of y'all powered through Harry Potter as quickly as you could, trying to get some accelerated reading points, or you know, just to say that you did it, just to stay on top. If this is 4,200, the Quran is 604 pages. Now, for my mathematicians, how many times can you complete Quran compared to the times it took for you to complete Harry Potter one time? At least 6 times. Say it, mashallah. Shiza, you were close. It's about 6 times, right? It's like 6, yeah, 6 times, right? So, subhanAllah, 6 times. And reading Harry Potter. Now think about the zeal it took for you to read Harry Potter versus the zeal that it takes for you to pick up this book. 604 pages. And depending on the one that you get, you might be able to get something like this. The different types of Qur'ans, they have different types of thickness depending on the lines on the pages, right? I think standard is 15 lines. You know, you might get a 13 liner if you crazy, or you might get one like this that's got 22 lines on it. That thing will send you in slow motion, make you feel like you don't even know your left from your right. So even then, this is not as long, right, as in terms of pages, even though the content is still there. Page count is irrelevant. What they were doing is they were just trying, what they were trying to do was just trying to keep some type of connection to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I tell, you know, especially my boys night squad, shout out to ICM Friday night program. Inshallah, we're coming back overnight. May Allah make it happen. Allah, man, me remove the COVID. Allah, man. We're coming, inshallah. We're coming, inshallah. So, you know, we tell them, hey, at least listen to some Quran for 3 minutes. I follow up with one of the bros, like, hey, I corner him off. I'm like, hey, did you do the thing? Like, oh, man, I didn't have time. So you can be doing like this all day on your Twitter, and you can't make time for this? You see the dichotomy, you see the difference in the mentality? It's different. Our sister asked, does reading with the eyes get as many hasanat as a voice reading? So some scholars said, yes, it does. Some scholars said, yes, it does. Because there is not a condition that says that if you say it out loud, then you get the reward. But because Quran is qira'ah, Quran means recitation, qira'ah, you have to recite it. Some said no. But because you are actually reading the Quran, then you automatically you're not going to be reading the Quran even with your eyes and not get something, right? So some said no, it's a reward, but it's not the same as reading it out loud. Kind of like how you get the reward of the imam who's leading you in prayer. For every harf that he reads, if you have the intention, if you have it in mind, depending on your mazhab, then inshallah you also get the 10 hasanat too. Or if I'm sitting in a circle of people reading Quran and I'm just like listening to it, inshallah I also get the 10 hasanat because I'm right there in it with them. So this is why the imams would have different khatam. So even the sheikh who's sitting with the student and just listening to him, because he's having it read upon him, then inshallah he also gets that reward. So this is the reason why they would diversify their relationship with the Quran. No, it's not just me speed reading it. No, it's not just me reading it slowly and reflecting over it. No, it's not just even me teaching it, but I'm also even putting my eyes on it constantly. So now how can a person who has this level of relationship with the Quran, don't you know that their hifd is going to be astronomically different than someone who just rocks back and forth in a corner and then, oh man, I feel good. And then they move on with their day? Completely different. So when you compare that to us, and I'm not talking about the movie, it feels a lot different. It's a lot different. And Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, he would complete the Quran once every 2 days. And you have so many examples like this. Hamza ibn Zayyad, the Imam Hamza from the Hamza ibn Habib al-Zayyad, the Imam from the Qira'ah of Imam Hamza, he would complete the Quran every single day. He would complete the Quran 29 times a month. And it's lunar calendar, so that means he's either doing it every day or he's doing he's spreading it out over 30 days. So you have a lot of examples of imams who used to do this. And what would motivate them to have that level of relationship with the Quran? When you look in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse number 30, the Prophet Allah, in the Quran, Allah is narrating a hadith from the Prophet where Allah says, the Prophet said that my people, my ummah, they abandoned the Quran. They abandoned it. They neglected it. They left it. Ibn al-Qayyim, he said that the neglect, the abandonment of Quran that's mentioned in this ayah is an abandonment because you stopped reading it. You don't read it. You divorce your relationship with it and you make it whatever you want. Our sister Maria said, it's interesting that we see this as super hard to do, but the Salaf would have found it hard to just waste time like we do. Us, right? The state of the Ummah today, subhanAllah. Interesting that we see this as super hard to do, but the Salaf would have found it hard to just waste time like we do. But at the end of the day, if you love something, it's that much easier. And that's true. And look, when you start to hear about stuff like this, yeah, it's going to make you feel bad. But it's healthy. It's healthy for you to see an exemplary standard so that you can strive for it. When you see people are rich, you shouldn't feel bad that you're not rich, but rather you should do what you can to increase and expand your wealth. When you see people who are athletic, and that doesn't mean that you need to be able to pick up a ball and, dunk like Jordan Kilgannon. If you know who that is, may Allah give you Jannah. If you don't, that would be a fun thing to look up on YouTube for the bros. I don't know if he keeps his shirt on or not, but yeah, just because he can jump up and look inside the rim, and dunk his whole arm and a half inside of it, it doesn't mean that you should be able to do the same thing. But you don't get depressed because you can't do it. You want to strive and be able to do that too. But of course, all of those things are based on your own passions and your own love. And if you don't have that natural love for yourself, then of course it's going to be even more hard. And everything about the Quran for us today is like we have to force ourselves to do the acts of worship. Like we have to convince, I shouldn't have to convince you that the Quran is amazing. But here we are now. So Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, he would finish the entire Quran every 2 days. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying on the Day of Judgment that my people, they abandon the Quran. And Ibn al-Qayyim, he explained this as that they stopped reading it. So just visualize in your mind for a second, standing in the courtroom of Allah Jalla Jalal on the Day of Judgment, and He has set up the scales, and everyone who's ever been wronged in any form of injustice has ever taken place, Allah now addressing it with everyone. And so, and so, in that situation, when this is happening, all right, I want you to just think to yourself about the Prophet ﷺ standing as a plaintiff, complaining about you abandoning the Quran. That's scary. The Prophet ﷺ, he does shafa'ah for the ummah on the day of judgment. He makes dua for the ummah on the day of judgment. Yeah, he does. But what about the ummah that he complains about abandoning the Quran on the day of judgment? Oh, well, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, he on the day of judgment, and you'll be shaded. The seven people shaded. Okay, well, what about the people that he's complaining about in this ayah? I mean, it's scary to really think about. Ya Allah, please keep us safe from abandoning your book. Allahumma ameen. And place it in our hearts so that we take it with us everywhere we go. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma ameen. So, look, the Quran is not just, oh, you need to sit in a corner and read a book. Even though you did that with Harry Potter, you probably did it with Charlie Bone and Percy Jackson and whatever his series of books were called. I hope they got canceled like the movies. Or what was that other silly series called? Cirque du Freak, or all these kid books. Or you were, you know, one of those guys really trying to get all the accelerated reading points, trying to read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series and suffering through it. And then you have the sickos of the world today who read, what was that disgusting series called? Game of Thrones. And yes, it's disgusting, and don't at me. The themes and all that stuff and the ending and all that was completely horrible. So may Allah keep us all safe from all of that. Don't ask how I know about it. You ask how you know. You know about it. So we sit down and reread all these things. I'm not going to put up what our sister just typed, but we read all these different things. And subhanAllah, I have to force you to read the Quran. I have to force you. I have to tell you, hey, look, you should read this. You see, the Quran is more than just a book that you read and forget about. And for those of you who read Harry Potter, like honestly, do you even remember the name of the Asian girl that Harry liked at one point in time? Haram relationship, but do you even remember her name? Or nah, Allah forgive you for knowing. Our brother dropped the name so quick. That was swift, bro. He dropped her name with the swiftest of swift. I'm gonna have to call you out in our chats, man. That was too quick. That was too quick. I'm gonna change your name in my contact to Joe. And you shouldn't know it either. All right. But anyways, that's just one little detail, right? What about all the other little details that you don't remember? And the Quran is more intricate in its detail, in every fabric of it. So you will have a person who memorizes the nuance of some stupid Netflix series that's probably gonna get canceled and not even make it to its third season. But you think that the numbers of the chapters of the Quran is not necessary, that the verse numbers aren't important. This is Kalamullah. This is from Rabbil Alameen. And when you read this stuff and when you watch this stuff on the internet, it doesn't do anything for you. But when you read the Quran, it actually benefits you, like legit. It's literally something to make you feel better. It makes you feel better. Put this in your notes and go back and read it and reflect over it and think about it and Google the tafsir on it. And look up a YouTube video on this, and I'm sure you're going to find something good. Chapter 13, Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 28. Chapter 13, Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 28. The impact of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what it does on the heart. And the greatest form of dhikrullah is the Quran. Sometimes you see the shayukh and you see the sheikha and you see the ustada with Quran and you're like, yo, they're mystical, man. Why do they look all mystical in the face? And when they move around, it's like, you know, the earth is just like laying under their feet. It's just like, not laying, but like laying. Like it just makes itself gentle under their feet. Like they just float. They're floating across the face of the planet. Keep their relationship with the Quran. People oftentimes, alhamdulillah, it's good to be in this position, but unfortunately, you have to repeat yourself a lot trying to explain this. People that ask me all the time, oh, do you do counseling? Can you help with some issues? We do marital counseling, stuff with the youth, stuff with families, all these different situations that come up. And especially when I'm talking one-on-one with somebody who has like an issue or an addiction or anything like this, number one question that we have to ask is, what's your relationship like with the Quran? When's the last time you read Quran? I don't know. Okay, that's the first problem. You're sad, you're depressed, you get angry, you hate your mom, you hate your dad, you hate your siblings, you hate your life, you wonder why you're here, you can't stand school and I can't get it right and my brain is all over the place and I have so much stress on my head and these people are dealing with that and the pandemic is stressing me out. I don't know where my future is going. How am I supposed to get married? How am I supposed to get married? How am I supposed to get married? 98% of the counseling to you is about marriage. It's the same questions. Okay, pause all of that, all this extra thought. What's your relationship like with the Quran? How is that? Because if you go to a doctor and you're sick, they're going to give you a prescription, right? They're going to give you a prescription for medication. Very rarely will a doctor give you a prescription and say, just take this for like a day and you'll be good. Even if like you get an infection, like you have strep throat and you have to take antibiotics, you have to take it until the cycle is finished. You have to take all of them. If you stop too early, it can actually kill you. When it comes to antibiotics, like if you have like an infection of the throat or something, anything that makes them put you on antibiotics, if you stop mid-cycle, it can actually kill you. You have to finish it out. You need to put it all in your body. Sometimes you will tell a person, read Quran. Just go read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Listen to some Quran. Just plug in the Quran and just have a good time, inshallah. And they say, oh, I do listen to Quran. First of all, lower your voice. Don't talk to me like that. Okay, you listen to the Quran, but maybe you need to up your dose. Which part of Quran are you listening to? Are you listening to the ahkam? You listening to the muhkamat? Or you listening to the stuff about Jannah? Like, where are you at? What juice are you in? Maybe we need to increase your juice. Yeah, you got to become psychiatrist when it comes to the book of Allah, because yes, depending on where you're at and what you're taking from it, it can help you in different situations. It becomes a type of a mental health check. If I'm sad and I'm upset and I'm angry and I'm stressed out and so on and so forth, always check two things spiritually first. How much Quran do I have and how much dua am I making? I'm stressed, I'm sad, I can't figure it out, I'm confused. Okay, how much Quran are you reading on your own? Not what you're forced to do by your parents or your occupation or whatever. But no, how much Quran are you reading? Just between you and Allah. How much are you listening to? You don't even have to read it. How much are you listening to? And how much dua are you making? Because the more you connect with the Quran, you cannot help but make dua to Allah. You can't help it. You just got to ask Allah. It just gets to that point. And so we need to move. I spell responsibilities kind of like Tommy did from Rugrats movie, responsibilities. Messed that one up. We need to move from thinking about the Quran as a responsibility, and we need to think about our relationship with the Quran as a type of friendship. It's a speech of Allah. You want to hear from Allah? I'm doing all this stuff and I made istikhara. Okay, make istikhara. This is good. Now, begin to pick up the book of Allah and find guidance in it because it's a form of guidance. Remember the verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 185 that we dropped before? Allah mentioned huda twice. Allah mentioned guidance twice. This is own thing in tafsir. We have to come back to that in another way, at another time. And folks, do me a favor. That dua or Maria from Muslim Minari or from Sahaba or Amr, anybody who has it, really, I want you to copy the dua of Ibn Mas'ud that we learned from the first class of our, mashallah. Now, there is a dua that the Prophet ﷺ said, if you make this, it will be a cure for your sadness, a cure for your anxiety. It'll be a cure for your worry. If you have problems, make this dua. But the caveats of the dua, and I know Anam, you better still have that dua memorized. The caveats of this dua is that you ask Allah to make the Quran the source of the solution. So you say you're sad, you say you're depressed, you say this, that, and the third. It doesn't matter if you talk to a psychologist. It doesn't matter if you get psychiatric aid. It doesn't matter any of those things. It's not gonna. The cure will be the Quran. That will be what helps you. So the caveat of this dua is that you ask Allah to gather the Quran as a source for your heart, in order to put light in your chest, in order to remove the sadness from your heart, and in order to remove your worry and anxiety. It's the Quran. That's the solution. Yeah, go ahead and drop that, inshallah. Look at the dua that Ibn al-Qayyim used to make. Look at the dua that Ibn al-Qayyim used to make. He said, whoever is not cured by the Quran, may Allah not cure them. And whoever is not sufficed by the Quran, may Allah never suffice them. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in this Quran, it's a healing for the heart. If it doesn't fix your heart, then nothing in this dunya that you receive is going to do it, right? What about the narration where Rasulullah said at the end of the hadith that if one makes salat and salam upon the Prophet, all of his sin will be forgiven and his problems will be solved? Is this acceptable as dua, or is it obligatory for a person to mention specifics whilst making dua? Excellent question, CSP. So as we mentioned in one of the classes that we did earlier this week, I think it was in Asma al-Husna, where we were talking about, where I think Ahmed asked about the hadith of Adam being created in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's image. We never ever take all of the concepts of having your dua or your worries or your sins forgiven and stuff. We never take all of that and filter it through one hadith. Rather, we take all of the ahadith and we put it together to have a full collective image, okay? Big picture. We want to be able to see it all together, right? Let me. Oh, mashallah, Ahmed, he dropped it too. All right, let me drop this English here. And if you can't make the dua in Arabic, and you can Google this dua, by the way, if you can't make it in Arabic, feel free to make it in English, okay? It's not an issue. Oh, I heard that you can't make dua in any language but Arabic. Jazakallah khairan for what you heard. We appreciate that. If you need to, you can make the dua. So that hadith that you mentioned, Yasmin, is the hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, if you keep sending salawat and salam upon me, Allah is going to remove all of your problems, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care of all of your sins. In our dua workshop that we did, Majid is somewhere smiling at the word workshop. You know, we talked about this in depth. You can use this, you can use other things, but really ideally you use everything together. That's ideal. Okay, now dropped the Arabic. Put that there for y'all. Good. So now you have transliteration, you have the English, you have the Arabic. It's a long dua, but it's worth reading. You're having a bad day? Go and pick this up. Put it in front of you. But remember, the solution through this dua is that you have to have a relationship with the Quran. So now let's talk about the power of the Quran itself, because we can talk about your relationship with its reading, but do you know that the Quran is actually powerful? Can you imagine that the people of Quraysh, now we talked about how the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment will be a witness against an ummah who abandoned the Quran. A'udhu billahi min dhalik. May Allah save us from that. May Allah give us the life long enough to finally develop a good relationship with the Quran. And may Allah not let us see death until we establish a healthy, beautiful, consistent, and strong relationship with His book. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah to not let death reach us until we establish a healthy, strong relationship with the book of Allah. Allahumma ameen. So that's the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment. This is from the verse in what was it? Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse number 30. Yeah, I think 30. Now think about the people of Quraysh. The people of Quraysh, did they harass the Prophet ﷺ? Of course they did. Did they torture the Sahaba? You know they did. But do you know that they were actually afraid of the Quran? To the point where they used to put beeswax and cotton in their ears. And when people would come into the city of Mecca, when the people would come into the city of Mecca, they would actually tell them, hey, look, there's a guy over there. Don't listen to him. If you hear his words, he's going to change you. He's going to change your whole thing. They were afraid of the impact of the Quran on their hearts so much that they literally put a rishaw. They actually put seals, they put coverings over their ears and drove people away from the source, from the recitation of the Quran, in order for people to not hear it. They wanted to be rid of it so much that when Ibn Mas'ud went out into the people of Quraysh and started reciting Surah Ar-Rahman, they beat him so bad that his face became so swollen you couldn't tell the difference between his cheeks and his nose. They didn't want to hear it. Keep it away from us. But at the end of Surah An-Najm, when the Prophet ﷺ is reciting it, you all may be familiar with the story. He prostrated, his eyes of sajda at the end of it. And the Sahaba prostrated. And the jinn prostrated, and even the mushrikeen prostrated. The mushrikeen, they prostrated because of the impact and the power of the words of the Quran. And you might just be reciting the Quran just because, well, let me just get through this real quick. Like, no, not at all. So when you think about the impact of the Quran, why is it that the words of the Quran, it impacted the people of Quraysh so much that it even made them put their face on the ground? And we hear it and what? Oh yeah, I don't like his voice. What are you? What are you talking about? His voice. It doesn't matter whose voice it is. It's still Kalam Allah, yes or no? So they were afraid of it. We have that example in Surah An-Najm. We live in the age of opposites. We're not afraid of the Quran, but we don't use it at all. They were running away from it because they were afraid of becoming Muslim. They were afraid of hearing it and believing it. We run away from it because we know it's the truth and we just don't want to do what it says. And right now, with the political unrest in this country, with everything that's happening, you are in an age where people are accepting. Y'all see that silly post that where Nickelodeon announced that SpongeBob was gay for Pride Month? You're living in an age where people will accept anything. They'll accept anything. You think they're going to accept SpongeBob being homosexual, but they're not going to accept the Quran? Do you have more pride in the things that you see on the internet than in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You'd be more willing to retweet a hashtag than to open your mouth and talk about the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to anyone. You're living in a time where people are accepting gender fluidity, where people are even accepting other races. I mean, as a kid, I never think that I would live to see this thing. I ain't never ever thought. No, ignore that. Ignore that. Parents, ignore that. All right, that's for the kids. I never thought. Says I never thought that I would live to see the day where like racial equality would be a fundamental discussion, like a critical discussion in our country, where people of all different races and colors would go outside and stand in the Texas heat and go into the Florida sun, contracting COVID and creating a new epicenter of the virus. But that's neither here nor there. They're trying to get rid of systematic oppression of Black people within this country that has systematically oppressed them, created their systems through systemic oppression of them. I never thought I would live to see the day. If you think that people are willing to accept gender fluidity, a cartoon character being gay, and people removing police brutality, you think they won't accept the Quran? You think they won't accept it? But are we shy of it? Are we scared of it? Do we just not like it? Look at, there was a time a few years ago where they were talking about the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was a series of events within the Middle Eastern world, with predominantly Arab countries, where there was so much civil unrest that like governments collapsed and there was like a lot of civil unrest. They're referring to the time, like people outside of this country are referring to the time of what we're going through in our country as the American Spring, because of the civil unrest of people standing up against standing up and asking the government to take a stance and to make serious changes when it comes to policies on dealing with minorities in this country. If you think that that's the case for minorities in this country, do you think that the getting rights for Muslims is that far behind? To the point where one of the prime ministers of one of the Middle Eastern countries, he said, look, no one likes to say this, but the American people, they cannot govern themselves. They need a more sophisticated form of governance for the lifestyle that they live. SubhanAllah, if we're living in a time where people are open to legislation where you can marry whatever gender you want and use whatever restroom you want, regardless of your gender, and your sex is different from your gender, do you think people are not open to the idea of discussing Quran? Really? Imam al-Tha'labi, he has an entire collection of an entire book about people who died listening to the Quran. That doesn't sound good. That's extreme. You keep your thoughts to yourself. The Quran penetrated their hearts so much that they heard the verse in the prayer and they just dropped dead. And we don't have time to talk about Abu Bishr ibn Bishr al-Misri, because his voice, people would seek him out. They would seek out Abu Bishr ibn Bishr because his recitation was so powerful that when people would stand behind him and pray, people would just pass out or die, just fainting and weeping and crying and dying in a prayer. Now, is that the type of end you want? Well, no, but Malik al-Maut is coming, so it might as well be in the best way possible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah al-Hashr, Surah al-Hashr talks about the Quran. If it was to be revealed upon a mountain, it would destroy it. We see the impact of the Quran in different ahadith about wahi, and how when the Prophet ﷺ would receive wahi, it was visibly intense on him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah said, if we took this same Quran and we put it on a mountain, it would crush it. If we listen to the Quran and our hearts are even harder than rocks, we can't even say our hearts are like bricks or diamonds or anything, because the Quran would have crushed it. It would have softened us. It would have made us humble to Allah. We hear it and it increases us in arrogance. The Prophet ﷺ, we know that he had a period of time in his life known as the year of sorrow. But Abu Bakr came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said in Sahih Hadith, you look great. You're becoming gray, meaning your hair, your beard, everything is becoming gray. He said, yeah, I'm becoming gray. Do you know why? It's because of Hud, Surah Hud and her sisters. Surah Hud, Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Surah Al-Mursalat, Surah Al-Naba, and Surah Al-Takwir. He said Hud and her sisters, meaning this chapter and the other chapters that are like it in terms of its content and what it talks about, is making me gray. Just the concepts in it about the akhirah, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the day of judgment, about all of this stuff. He said it's making me turn gray. Not the year of sorrow. When the year of sorrow happened, he was sad, but no narration said he turned gray. But you see what the Quran did to him? It's because the Quran has to begin to have this spiritual power wash on your soul. You got to let the thing cleanse you. I remember me and one of my closest friends, we used to always we would try to find, it doesn't matter how they sounded. We would just try to find the imams who were reciting Quran, and when they were reciting, it just sounds like they're just being completely destroyed. Like Thanos snapping them would not make them more destroyed than whenever they're reciting the book of Allah. They can't even get it out. They're just up there, just completely wrecked by understanding the speech of Allah Jalla Jalal. Because whenever the Quran hits you in that special place, it cleanses your soul. It's the deepest form of catharsis. Crying in a corner eating chocolate and ice cream doesn't leave you feeling more relieved and refreshed. What type of cathartic release is that? It sounds unhealthy, but welcome to 2020. It's not as good as this. So we have this delusional outlook when it comes to modern reflections in tafsir. And that has a few different ways, a few different forms of deception. You think that listening to some sheikh on YouTube talk about the Quran is going to do it for you. You cannot have this vicarious relationship with the Quran through someone else's knowledge of it. No, you need to go get some of that yourself, even if it's just a little bit. Oh, and when the sheikh was saying this about the ayah and he started to cry, Habibi, that's not you, that's him. The Quran did that to him. And you trying to live vicariously, you're trying to live through him and have that experience with the Quran through him? No, you gotta get whatever he did to get to that point. You need to say, hey, yo, I just need a little bit of what you got. Not that voice. And we also live in an age where anybody feels like they can pick up the Quran and just start talking about it. And for those of you who come to our Sabiqun class and we talked about the Quran, you know that Al-Fudail, that he had some words about that, you know. So we're not going to go back and repeat that again. But yeah, just saying, you look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Zumar chapter 39, verse 23. That whenever the Quran, whenever it starts to hit you, it softens your heart. It gives your skin chills. It gives you chills. Your eyes, they fill with tears. You're not going to do that from some dyed understanding of, ooh, and this word, whom, him, hun. Yeah, that's not going to get you there. A little bit of baby Arabic is not going to get you there. Rather, you're going to need like the full buffet. You're going to need some tafsir, you're going to need some commentary, you're going to need some hadith, just kind of sprinkle it off, cap it off a little bit. It's like eating nihari, you know. It's like you get some halim. I'm going to finish the example. It's like you get some halim, right? You get your little chopped masala, you put a little chana, and then after that, you get some little lemon juice, a little lemon, even fresh lemon. But if you got the juice, then you get, and then the thing that caps off the nihari is you get them fried onions. So you get your chopped masala, you got your lemon, and you get. My little sister said you're really daisy now. Now I know Fo said nihari is greater than halim. This is a matter of khilaf because what it takes to get the. We're not going to talk about the different madhahib. It depends on where the nihari is from. Is it you got the Karachi spice? Are we talking South India, North India? I mean, where are we at? But let me get back to this. Am I drilling a little bit on the camera? All right, team, y'all make sure y'all cut this part out too. How did we get here? So your dyed understanding of the Quran is not going to have that effect on you. You gotta get the fried onions. You gotta get the masala. Now, and the cilantro. Yeah, cilantro is a must. Now, so one of the biggest excuses that we have for the Quran is it's too hard. I can't read. It's too hard. Good. It's great that it's hard. If you were to read the Quran from A to Z, and get 10 hasanat for every letter, you're going to get 33,200,000 hasanat. Why do you need 33.2 million hasanat? It's because the more hasanat you have in your spiritual bank account, the easier things in your life will be. And the more sayyi'ats you have, putting your spiritual bank account in debt, the more difficult your life will be. So every single, once a month, or once every 2 months, once every 3 months, once every 6 months, Abu Hanifa said that the right of the Quran on you is that you complete it at least once a year. Imam Ahmad said that you need to complete it at least twice, because the Prophet ﷺ completed it twice at the end of his lifetime. So even there's an obligation for you to get that 33.2 million hasanats at least once a year. Either do it listening to it, either do it reading with your eyes, either do it reading with your mouth, or do it with people who are reading it and you just sitting there and you taking it in too. 33.2 million hasanat. You need that. It'll make your life easier. The stuff that you want, oh, my school, oh, I can't get into this, I need that, my college, and I don't know if I'm going to be online, and I'm so stressed, and I worry about money, and blah, 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 blah. The solution, go get that hasanat. There's tens of thousands of hasanat waiting for you every single day. Just when you read Fatiha, you get in like a couple hundred, you get like over 100 hasanat. So go ahead, get that money. Like, that's what you want. We need this. And if you struggle, then guess what? You get 2 times the reward. So now you go from 33.2 million to 66.4 million hasanat. Twice the reward for people who struggle. So go ahead, do it. So why you should never read what you know, why you should read what you know. And some people be like, well, I don't know that much Quran. Look, what do you mean you don't know that much Quran? If you know Fatiha, that means you know more Quran than LeBron James. If you know Fatiha, that means you know more Quran than Jeff Bezos. He has $110 billion in his bank account and his net worth and his collective assets, but he doesn't have Fatiha. That means you're richer than him in the sight of Allah. Don't you ever say, I don't know that much Quran. It's called Fatiha for a reason. When you read Fatiha, it's the table of contents of the Quran. Surah al-Fatiha, also known as Surah al-Hamd, also known as Quran, also known as Kitab. What do you mean? As-Sab'a al-Mathani. From the verse in Surah Al-Hijr, chapter 15, verse 87. It's the 7 verses that are recited more than anything on the face of the planet. Think of the most popular song that has ever existed, which I'm not going to get into that wheel of what that is. But, oh God, I started thinking too hard about it. Let me get it out of there. So, even the most popular song on the face of the planet that reaches #1 on the top Billboard 100, even that's not going to be sang or repeated on the radio as often as Al-Fatiha. The most remembered thing on the face of the planet, it doesn't matter what time it is, someone somewhere on the face of the planet is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, because someone somewhere on the face of the planet at any given point in time is praying. What do you mean you don't know that much Quran? You have Fatiha. Pray. Read it. You know, Shaykh al-Islam, they call him Shaykh al-Islam for a reason. Do you think that he was reading Surah Al-Baqarah 1,000 times every day? No. He would read Surah Al-Fatiha over 1,000 times. He said, it's my food. If I don't eat, I can't function. So you should never ever diminish anything by way of the Quran. Not the chapter numbers, not the verse numbers, not how much you have memorized, not how much you read. No. Even a little bit every single day, even if you read 1 ayah every single day, that's better than not reading any ayats at all. Even if you just reciting it from point A to point B. All right, well, I'm in transit right now. Let me just get some Quran in motion. Let me just read to myself. You know, that's better than nothing at all. So never ever diminish it. Oh, well, I only have a juz memorized. Only have a juz memorized. What do you mean only have a juz memorized? Even if it's juz amma, that's 37 chapters. That's 37 chapters. What are you talking about? Only a juz. Yeah, but no buts. This is the speech of Allah. How can you say something from Allah is not important, or that it's a little bit? One of the shortest chapters of the Quran, depending on the qira'ah, it has 4 verses or 5 verses. It's Surah Al-Ikhlas, also known as Surah Al-Tawheed. It's 4 verses or 5 verses. It's a third of the Quran in terms of the value that it's covering. Zalzala is like a fifth. Ayatul Kursi in another hadith is a fifth. Surah Al-Kafirun in another narration is a sixth of the Quran. It's all right there. What are you talking about? A little bit. So the self-sufficient Muslim will go around thinking, hey, look, they just use the Quran at their own leisure, but that's not appropriate. The self-sufficient Muslim who does not have Quran is not really sufficient at all. The modern scholar, and when I say the modern scholar, I don't just mean your the sheikh who has the most Twitter, Insta Facebookers. Your boy is under 3 rocks twice, so I don't really know about who's even the most popular on social media. I don't have any. But when we say the modern scholar, everyone is a scholar in today's age. Anyone who can open their phone and Google something feels like they know more about Islam than somebody who spent years studying it. Allah musta'an. So the modern scholar, which in this case can be anyone, they only use Quran to push their own point. Oh, Black Lives Matter. Let me find this one ayah in the Quran to also match this movement. No, Quran does not need Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter needs Quran in order for it to be successful. Oh, people are arguing about this thing on the internet. Let me pull this one ayah and drop it right here in order to make a point. No. Quran is the penultimate point. You don't use it to make your points. Your points are moot. Your points should be the Quran. You should not use the Quran for your points. What are you talking about? So we see the overt abuse or rather negligence of the Quran in our world today, where everyone is a scholar and everyone uses the Quran and everyone understands it and everyone knows Arabic and everyone can do nahu and sarf. Everyone feels like they have something from it, and we see the effects of that on our ummah today. We have no identity of our own. We assimilate into everything else everyone is doing, and we contribute nothing from our deen to what would help the world be better. When the world was changed for the better in the age of enlightenment, in the golden age of mankind, going from the dark ages to the age of enlightenment, who led the charge for that? It was Muslims. With what? The Quran, with the Sunnah. So not to go too much further on the power of the Quran, but look, the Quran is an intercessor for you on the Day of Judgment. I'll check it out. Oop. Ignore that. It's an intercessor on the Day of Judgment for you. Meaning, fasting in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, fasting and the Quran will come as intercessors for you on the Day of Judgment. Surah Al-Mulk will testify will be an intercessor for you. The Quran, it testifies to your prayer. I used to keep them up at night. The Quran will say, it will intercede to Allah. I used to keep them up at night. Not your prayer saying that, but the Quran saying that. I kept them up at night because Quran and Salah is interconnected. Surah Al-Baqarah and Ali Imran, it doesn't just keep shayateen out of your house, but it also will serve as canopies for you on the day of fear. And Allah mentions, and I want you all to take this verse. If you don't take anything else from this chapter of the Quran, take this. It's the 20th chapter, Surah Al-Taha, verses 124 and 126. Chapter 20, verse 124 and 126. Go look at it and reflect over it and read the English translation or the Urdu translation, whatever translation you need, and read it again and again and again and put it in your brain. Just think about it. The person who abandons the recitation of Allah, Allah says He will put them in danka. Danka is misery. It's complete and utter sadness. You wonder why you're sad. You wonder why you're stressed. What is your relationship like with the Quran? Then Allah says that that person who abandoned the Quran and it gets put in danka, they will be raised on the Day of Judgment blind. And they will say, why am I blind when I used to be able to see? And Allah will say, just like how you used to turn away from the Quran and you used to neglect the revelation of Allah, now on this day you are neglected. May Allah keep us safe from that. I mean, I'm not going to think too much on this, otherwise I'm going to start crying on it. Now, so here's our action items for this. First and foremost, beyond Ramadan, start to make Quran your best friend. It's not that the Quran is an acquired taste. Some people think, well, I just can't do that. No. If you couldn't do that, then Allah wouldn't have sent it down. Everyone can do it. It's for everybody. But maybe you need to dabble in the garden a little bit. There is no better Quran. There's no, this chapter of the Quran is better. It's a gem amongst gems. Some chapters, they hit you differently than others. So maybe you need to mess around, with the Hamim, the collection of the Hamim from Surah Al-Ghafir chapter 40 to Surah Al-Ahqaf chapter 46. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need to start looking at the chapters of the Quran that are named after letters, Maybe you need some Saad in your life,
the 38th chapter. Or maybe that's too much. Maybe it's, story of Shaitan and all this stuff. Maybe that's a little much. Maybe you dial it back a notch. You go back a few chapters to Surah Yasin, or maybe, that's kind of a little bit long. Okay, take it easy. Go to the 50th chapter. Check out Surah Qaf. I don't know. Okay, all right. Well, go up to chapter 68 and read Surah Nun or Qalam. It's all about the approach. It's a dynamic book. It's from Rabbul Alameen. Don't think that you have to pick it up and read it from A to Z. You notice how Quran has an opening, but it doesn't have a closing? Quran is a book that is sequential, but it is not in chronological order. In more cases than not, you can pick up the Quran, turn to any given page, and you can read from that page to another. And I used to do this exercise for my old school Hufaz from North Carolina. You guys remember back in the day, we used to have the Hufaz all sit, and we would say, all right, just everyone get a mushaf and open to a random page. You take an ayah, you take an ayah, you take an ayah. And whenever you read it, and as they would read it, I would just explain what the ayah says. Explain what the ayah says. Yeah, that's talking about Musa. Okay, he opened up another one, it's talking about Musa. Now this verse is talking about the Day of Judgment. Now this verse is talking about the Muttaqeen. Now this verse is talking about the rulings. This verse, and when you read it like that, it's a completely dynamic book. Don't sometimes people will be like, I gave my non-Muslim friend the Quran to read. First thing I say is why? But that's a completely different discussion. The next question becomes, okay, where did you tell him to read from? Baqarah. Bro, why would you have them read the hardest chapter of the Quran, period? It has the most rules in it. Why would you have them read that? You could have told them to read Rahman. You could have told them to read Muslat. You could have told them to read Hud and her sisters, with some gray on them. So we think about the Quran like we think about other books, and it's an extreme disservice to the Quran. Make it your best friend and see the select gardens in it, Juz Amma has its own feel to it. Whenever you get, to Surah Al-Fath, whenever you get to Surah Muhammad, whenever you get to Surah Al-Hujurat, that's its own little area of the Quran after Surah, between Ahqaf and between Qaf. It's like its own, those three little chapters right there, it's like its own thing. And then when you get to the 60s and you look at, Mumtahana, and then you look at, what's the 61st one? That's not the Ghabun. Even my hifd is jam. May Allah give us strong hifd. And you look at Surah Al-Jumu'ah, and you look at Surah Al-Munafiqun, and you look at Surah Al-Talaq's 65th chapter. You look at Tahrim, the 66th chapter. It's like its own little region right there. And then you get to Mulk, right? And then what's the 68th chapter? Anyways, just dig around a little bit. It's a buffet. Go look for your favorite meal and take what you need from it. Yeah, 61 is, I think it is soft. Yeah, it's soft. And 68, 67 is Mulk, 68 is Qalam, and then 69 is Haqq. Oh, man. And then you get to 70, it's like Ma'arij. It's like, yo, Ma'arij? Oh, shoot. Allah called himself Dhul Ma'arij. What does that mean? Go in there and take some khair for yourself, all right? I've dwelled on that point too long, but I hope the point is well received. Second, cellular proof. I got an Ain, so all 4 of my cell phones got reduced to this one. People used to know I used to have more than one cell phone, but someone or some people, they Ain me, and one by one, they all fell. But Allah preserve the one we have left. We all have cell phones, and you touch this thing every single day. Do not let this be a proof against you that you don't have a Quran app on it and that you never ever open it. That you listen to YouTube videos, astaghfirullah, you listen to music, you watch Netflix, Hulu Plus on this, use it to watch haram, listen to haram, waste your time, and subhanAllah, you don't put anything by way of the deen on this. It's a huge proof against you. At least put a Quran app on it and at least open it twice a day. At least. We would say leave the Quran app on in the background, honestly, so that you feel shy to open other things. We would say that even. But I'm not going to go that far. At least 2-3 times a day, open the Quran app. Put some khair in this thing, this time waster. Now, we mentioned the examples of Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi and Ibn Ayyash and all these people. Look, don't be like, all right, I'm going to just go read Quran right now. Don't burn yourself out. Remember spiritual fitness. Take a good approach to it. You can't just jump into keto. You know, you got to build yourself up. You got to go to the grocery store. You got to make sure you get right. Maybe get rid of some stuff first. Okay, this is my last meal, and now you're going to do your little keto diet. Take the same approach. Start with an ayah. Start with 3. Start with a third of a page. Start with half. You know, pick your spot. All right, I'm going to just listen. All right, I'm going to set my timer on my phone, and I'm going to just read it until the timer goes off. So remember that reading the Quran is like spiritual CrossFit. I know CrossFit just got canceled, so maybe we talk about, we say spiritual insanity, you know, the cardio exercise or P90X, whatever you need. I know CrossFit is canceled. But anyways, so so know that picking up the Quran and just reading it, it requires a lot of stamina. And that stamina is built over time. So don't get discouraged if you can't get in it and just and read a lot at once. Take your time, get fit, you know. And now the last thing that we'll mention by way of the Quran is this is the real source of change. Allah mentions in the beginning of Surah Ibrahim, the 14th chapter, verse number 1, well, depending on 1 and 2, depending on if you count, unless I'm wrong. Never mind. At the beginning of Surah Ibrahim, that Allah revealed this light to bring people out of dhulumat. The Quran was revealed during a period in time known as the Dark Ages, and after the Prophet ﷺ left in the completion of the Book of Allah Jalla Jalal, and the completion of Islam and its perfection and the application and understanding of those who preserved it, it opened up the world to the age of enlightenment. Use the Quran to change the world around you. Reflect and learn this knowledge. Someone who has knowledge of the Quran will have knowledge of many, many different things. The knowledge in the Quran, it exceeds time and space. So use the Quran to impact your own time and your own space. If your activism or any of the efforts that you do, because I know not everybody is into this social media trending and all this other stuff. Some of you are active and involved in different organizations within your community and so on and so forth. Whatever efforts you do, if it lacks the Quran, I want you to know right now it's going to fail. Or it's only going to make things worse. So put the Quran in motion in whatever you do, whether it's activism, or whether it's your education, or whether it's your career path, your relationship with your family, your friends. Make it a part of it. Otherwise, whatever you touch, it will either fail or it will get worse. Okay. Is reading Quran always the best dhikr to do, or are there exceptions? Quran is number 1 when it comes to dhikrullah, but there's other forms of dhikr as well. Tahleel, la ilaha illallah, you know, all of the adhkar go back to the Quran in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So there's adhkar that you see in the Sunnah, but when it comes to remembering Allah, it's reflection over the Quran. So again, we don't filter one thing through, or we don't use everything and filter it to one thing. We create a full picture with it. So as a part of your dhikr diet, you need to make sure Quran is in it. Just like how you make dhikr after salah, it's a part of it. Now, do you have to know the tafsir to be able to have that powerful connection with it? Not necessarily. You know, we told a story in our Sabiqun class about a man who just heard a few words from the Quran, and he became Muslim. He came back like years later, and he heard one more ayah from the Quran. When he heard it, it made him drop dead. We'll save that story for another time. But yeah, it's not just having a powerful understanding of it. It's having a passion and a love for the Book of Allah. That is what leads to that connection. Because there are plenty of people who have a lot of knowledge of Arabic, have a lot of knowledge of tafsir, have a lot of knowledge of fiqh, have deep knowledge of the Quran and very strong hifz, but they don't have a connection with the Quran. They recite and recite and recite. Their eyes are never wet. Their heart is never softened. Sometimes people with the most knowledge of the Quran are the ones who get impacted by it the least. Sometimes people who don't have the most knowledge of the sciences of the Quran, but understand its impact and its influence, these are sometimes the people who have the greatest connection. I know some mystical aunties, man, they just begin to say Allah subhanahu, and they just start to cry. They can't even say subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. But it's not like they're ulama, it's just they know what it means, like they have an understanding of the depths of it all. That makes sense. A minute for how Hijr and Nahl flow together. Yeah, you know, chapter 15, chapter 16, actually, really, you can go Ra'd, Ibrahim, Hijr, Nahl, Isra. Just that little bridge right there. And think about it, like after you come out of Anfal and Toba, then you get Yunus, you get Hud, you get Yusuf. And then after you get these three chapters named after the prophets, then you get Ra'd, thunder. Then after that, you get another prophet, Ibrahim. Then you get Hijr. Then you get Nahl. Then you get Isra. It's just, we'll have a tafsir class where we only talk about the names of the Quran and why it's important. For da'wah, how do you combat the idea that the Quran has ancient ideas? All you gotta do is open it. All you gotta do is open it. Sometimes, Ahmed, people who think like that, they think that the Quran is like the Bible, right? But it's not. So whenever you open it, you begin to explain the concepts about the creation and so on and so forth. It makes it very, very clear. This is not like some ancient tome, you know. It's a lot deeper than that. And we'll go over this more in some of our dawah classes. What are some ways we can put the Quran emotion in our dunya things? In motion or emotion? Very simple. You know, if you're reciting the Quran through like don't take the dunya and then try to force Quran in it. If you have Quran at the beginning of your day, throughout your day, then you're gonna see how the Quran connects with everything that's happening in your day. You know, say for example, you're like, all right, well tomorrow, what was the verses Brother Isa said, or the chapters? Okay, he said, what was it? Just start with the ones that are named after letters. So you open up the table of contents and you're like, okay, all right, tomorrow I'm gonna start with Yasin. And then you start to read Yasin. And you hear the story of the man who ran from the other side of the town. And then you start to reflect on it, and then you start to think about how that connects with the social injustice that exists in the world today. Yeah, so start with Quran and everything else will connect with that. Don't try to take everything you got going on in your life and connect it with Quran. It's one of the fatal flaws of the modern commentators on the Quran. They try to take, and look at this modern thing, and look at what it says in the Quran. It's like, no. Look at what it says in the Quran. Now look at these modern things. It's already here. And now look how you see it evident there. Don't say, look at what's evident here and then try to connect it backwards. It doesn't work. What are your most recommended tafsir books? It depends on what you need, you know? It depends on what you need. Like if you need like, it depends on what you need. That's the only way I can answer your question, Zohan. Like, what do you want? Do you just want like something light? Like something that's just gonna give me an overview? Then you have Tafsir Jalalain, you have Tafsir As-Sa'di. Do you want something that's gonna give you like some in-depth explanation of some things? Well, I saw that there's a translation of Tafsir Al-Qurtubi. Are you looking like for the fiqh comparisons and stuff like that? Well, the Tafsir Al-Qurtubi is gonna help you with that. Depending on your Arabic, some books of tafsir you need people to walk you through. Like, alhamdulillah, I had two shuyukh walk me through this one collection of tafsir called Adwa al-Bayan by Imam al-Shanqiti. It revolutionized the way that I look at the Quran. And it actually facilitated my ability to connect verses with each other, because that tafsir is amazing. So that's tafsir Adwa al-Bayan or tafsir al-Shanqiti. Tafsir Ibn Kathir is like, it's like if you were to build an NBA 2K player, it would just say all around the 3-level score threat. You know, it's just top to bottom, 2-way slasher, quadruple archetype, you know, different level. So it just depends on what you're looking for. I've heard that the Quran is number 1 by default, except when a certain dhikr is recommended for a specific time. I wouldn't make such a broad statement like that. I wouldn't make such a broad statement. Quran is a form of dhikr to make you remember Allah, but certain adhkar that you say has certain effects, like the adhkar that you make after salah has a certain effect. There's different ad'iyah that you can say in different situations, like the Prophet said, whoever says la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu al-mulku wa lahu al-hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, he said saying this, it removes fatigue, you know. So or sending salawats upon the Prophet like the hadith that Yasmin mentioned, the hadith of the So I wouldn't make it like so specific, because we know the Prophet would make different types of adhkar, you know, not just specific to times. Allah. Also, is it wrong to go about with the intention of reading the Quran just to review it? No, this is a noble reason. What's your favorite surah or portion of the Quran? The last 15 chapters. Zalzalat an-Nas is my favorite. Emotion, by the way. Okay, I got you. I'm not sure why, but number one combination is Baqarah and then Fatir. You know, Fatir is one of those Ramadan only surahs. I also, outside of Zalzalat an-Nas, I love Ramadan only surahs of the Quran, where you're never gonna hear someone recite from this part of the Quran unless it's Ramadan. Unfortunately, our Ummah today has chosen like 15 primary passages of Quran. Really, there's like 9 that they rotate the most frequently, but they've taken like 15 parts of the Quran and they recite it the most often, and it severs our relationship with the greater parts of the book. And then whenever you don't have people who have the patience to learn Ilmul Qira'at, because really that's the only reason why some scholars don't do it. It's really just laziness. And you can quote me on that. Oh, you don't need that. How can you say you don't need something from Quran? Like, may Allah just keep us safe from talking reckless out of both sides of our mouth. I mean, one of the things about that is, you know, you don't get to taste the different flavors of the Quran and hear its different sounds and then connect with its different meanings, because you only hear some verses and you lose out on others. You say a verse from the Quran, you're like, I didn't know that verse. Yeah. So I was referring to what you right hand owns. The verse from Surah Al-Mu'minun, chapter 22, verse like, what is that, 5 and 6? That's not an archaic concept. I'm not. Ask the local imam. Ask the local imam for the tafsir that I like, something that is yeah. So possession with your right hand. Look, there are some concepts in Islam, Ahmed, that were meant to be like phased out of the society. Like, for example, slavery does exist in Islam, but it's not generational slavery, meaning it's designed to only exist for a period of time, not for all time. And it's the same for possessing with the right hand and stuff like this. So something in depth, Zuhad, that you can use for your tafsir, start with Ibn Kathir. Start with Ibn Kathir if you don't have access to Arabic, like the ability to read Arabic. Start with Ibn Kathir and then get the translation of Tafsir al-Qurtubi. I think these two will suffice you. Will randomly open the Quran help when you're going through emotional issues, or would you need to really think about choosing something? Hey, sometimes I just pick up the Quran, just thumb my finger through it a few times, and I just like land on something. You know, roll my finger up and down the page and then stop. Just take the eye. And I'll do that like maybe 1 time, 2 times, 10 times, and just to, you know, just to get the juice. Don't have a rigid relationship with the Quran. You don't have rigid relationships with your friends. Sometimes you hang out and you do this. Sometimes you're just chilling. Sometimes you get together to do things. Sometimes you ask your friends for help. Have a very dynamic relationship with the Book of Allah. We ask Allah to bless the organizers. We ask Allah to bless those who help with it. We ask Allah to bless the one who made the flyer, the one who set up the link. The entire ICM youth team and the entire ICM youth and all of the youth and everyone who took the time to come. We ask Allah to make us from those who are best friends with the Quran, and that Allah does not take our lives and take our ability to recite and understand it, except that we establish a strong relationship with it. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the Quran a source of life and a source of light and a source of relief for all of the difficulties in our affairs. And we ask Allah to make the Quran the primary source of guidance for everything that's happening in our lives. We ask Allah to put us in a position to use the Quran to rectify the injustices that we see in the world, the same way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his Sahaba Ridwanullah alayhim ajma'in were able to do in their time and beyond. Allahumma ameen. Buritum wa juzitum wa wuqitum wa kufitum wa ani shaitani nuhitum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.